you're doing all right this afternoon. Sean Cardovillis on Capital FM. It is Saturday Music and Sport now. Tomorrow is the first anniversary of the Kenyan professional Sule Kangangi, who sadly died in a crash in the US. It was a gravel race in the US last year. Now, an incredible feat last weekend. A group of cyclists, they cycled from Nairobi to Eldoret. They went to meet the late Sule's mother, and they were raising money for her and her family. Now, I'm proud to have the leader of the group, the man that organized the ride, Jack Siro. Jack, thank you very much for joining us on Capital FM. First of all, you're a very active rider. Just tell us about a brief history about your cycling.
Thanks, Sean Cardovillis, for inviting me to this show. My name is Jack Siro, and I am a cyclist by hobby, and also sometimes it doubles up as a form of transport when I'm commuting within town and its environments. So I've been cycling half of my life since the years of around 2008, when I was using it to go to school. There was a time I was doing a day school in high school, so I used a bike to commute to the school. And then I'll just say, when I started my life here in Nairobi back in late 2016, one thing that I had to look for was a bike, because I knew transport was becoming an issue for me here in Nairobi. So I bought myself a bike, but by then I didn't have quite a professional bike like the one that I have. I just started to encounter different cyclists on the road, and even the way they were dressed, it was different. And from time to time, I will stop some of them on the way to learn a few things from them, and even take contacts from them. Then from there, I started to even get to know some bike shops around town. And I would say what even made me hit my climax in cycling as much as it was a hobby was in 2020, when the COVID pandemic came in. That's when I realized there were people who were cycling very far. Like there were cyclists who were cycling from Nairobi to Mombasa 500 kilometers under 24 hours. That's when I realized that people can actually do a lot on the bike. And it started to build the passion in me to start to explore the world with my bike. And at the moment, as I speak, I've done a few races, not to win anything, but to have the fun that comes with racing. And most of the time, I do engage myself in an endurance cycling, whereby we cycle like not less than 200 kilometers when we go for a single ride. And so far, so good. My cycling has been geared towards mental health, not just for me, but even for the people I have put together in a community that I'm heading, called Cycling Nairobi.
Now, the late Sule, it seems like his death really touched you. How well did you know him?
Well, Sule Kangangi, I didn't know him on a personal level, but at some point we did interact when I was attending the race at E10. And it's a major race that he had actually won a couple of times, and he was giving us advice, telling us that the race, it is to him, when he races, it is a race, but to us, when he races, it is a challenge. So that was the time that I first came in close contact with him. And then also when he was participating in the Southern Bypass individual time trial at the Southern Bypass. So I actually filmed him while he was racing alongside with Bobby Joseph. And I saw that he was quite an impressive guy. And I used to know him. Actually, another thing that even made me to know him more was when he cycled from Nairobi to Mombasa and back 1,000 kilometers, raising money for two orphanages, one here in Nairobi and another one in Eldoret. So that's when I started to be interested in his affairs. And from that time, I've always been looking up what he's up to. I think his death was just like a blow, because this is somebody you look up to as a mentor, though you are just looking at him as a mentor from a distance.
All right, just tell us about the ride. And by the way, from a personal point of view, I was really, really touched by it. I actually contributed to your ride as well. Just tell us about the ride, why you organized it, and then, of course, the ride itself, and then when you met Sule's mother and the family?
The reason why I organized the ride is that if you look at somebody, what actually he did before he died, or what he was doing more or most of the time, you'll actually want to do it in memory of him. It could be somebody who is running, it could be somebody who is playing football, it could be somebody who is preaching, whatever that person was doing that took a lot in his life. I think that is the best thing you can honor that person with. So, like Sule Kangangi, he has been honored by people doing road races. Even this Sunday, there is a road race at 10 in memory of him. This is the second one. The first one was last year, immediately after his death. And so, when he died and when the funeral was due, I had planned the first ride in memory of him, and which we cycled from here to Eldoret. So this one that we did this year, it was the second version of it. And as much as there are cyclists who want to race, there are also other cyclists who do not want to race, but they want to enjoy the thrill of doing an endurance ride. So that is where I come in, because that's also my interest I have in cycling. So I actually I started to organize this ride because one thing is that Sule had also done a lot of junk miles, and there was no better way to also not do that ride without thinking about him when he was riding from Nairobi to Mombasa, or one time he also rode from Eldoret to Nakuru, because he was bringing other cyclists to come and race in Nakuru, and there was not space. So Sule offered to ride his bicycle so that one cyclist could get space in his car. So I could say that Sule Kangangi made a lot of sacrifices for cyclists, and that is one thing. So when somebody offers to come and ride from Nairobi to Eldoret, you have an idea how much sacrifice that person is putting. So that is one way of looking at it, and it actually paid off, because there are people whom we represented, and there are people that actually were happy to participate and join me in it.
Finally, it's not the first time you've ridden to Eldoret. How difficult was it riding this time? And just tell us some of the challenges you had on the bike riding to Eldoret.
Well, I would say the first time it was when it was challenging, because the first time it was drizzling. Actually, from Nakuru, we were riding in the rain, and then towards places like Timboroa, it was still drizzling and it was very cold. Some of us could not make it past Timboroa because, again, it was getting late. But this time round, the reason why we started early is because we wanted to get to Eldoret while it was still daylight. So the biggest challenge that we had in this ride was the cold weather from Limuru to Kinungi to almost Naivasha. It was very cold. Some of us were freezing, and the fingers were actually refusing to cooperate. But that's one part of it. Another part that I experienced was actually being a leader, trying to put the group together is a challenge. I had that challenge last year, but this time I decided to make it easier by having one group. Though after Nakuru, we had to split into two groups, because that is where the real suffering starts. So I would say putting the team together was also a challenge. There are people who are feeling like we are going too fast, and others who are feeling like we were going too slow. So trying to keep all these people together was a challenge. And then another challenge I would say is that like a leader, you're always worried of a lot of things. Sometimes you are on the bike, but you have to make phone calls to the driver of the chase car. You have to make calls to the people at the place where you are heading to, try and see that things are actually in order. So those are some of the challenges, but I would say this time round, the challenges that I had, they were not as the other time. Even the terrain, it didn't hit me as a shock, because I was already prepared for it, and I'd say it was easier this time round compared to the other time.
All right. Thanks very much. Just to let you know once again, tomorrow is the first anniversary of the late Sule Kangangi, who passed away during a race, a gravel race in the US last year. But Jack, thank you so much for sparing the time out. And as always, you're doing some amazing things with the cycling community. If you need anything from Capital FM, just let me or Capital know. We'd be happy to help you out. An incredible achievement, cycling from Nairobi to Eldoret in 14 hours. Jack Siro, thank you so much for joining us on Saturday Music and Sport.
Thank you.
Sean Cardovillis, Capital.